Man forces two girls to stay hungry. Flight attendant does this. She never imagined what would happen on Delta Airline Flight 310 when she reported for duty. The job she did always came with a couple of complications. A calm attitude is required when managing hundreds of people. Her instincts were needed this time so she could try to save someone before it was too late. Meeting new people and traveling the world were always Lorraine's passions. In her childhood, she dreamt of being a flight attendant and traveling to exotic locations. As soon as she finished high school, she applied to every airline she knew and eventually landed a job at Delta Airlines. It wasn't always easy, and Lorraine missed home at times, but she loved her job. Her experience allowed her to see the world, meet new people, and help others. On Flight 310, she was about to encounter some difficult passengers and situations she hadn't seen before. In addition to passengers settling into her seats, Lorraine and the flight attendants performed their pre-flight routine as usual. It was a diverse group of people. Having worked on domestic flights for much of her career, Lorraine would be working on an international flight for the first time. It was an exciting trip from Salt Lake City, Utah to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. A lot of elderly people and some young children traveling alone always needed her assistance. Her constant presence ensured they had everything they needed. Her favorite part of the job was dealing with children. Whenever they were afraid, she had something ready that would grab their attention and distract them from their fear. The situation was different today, however. An anxious and fidgety man appeared in Lorraine's back row as the plane took off. He was accompanied by two young girls. The man avoided eye contact and kept his face hidden behind a baseball cap when she attempted to approach him. Throughout the flight, Lorraine kept a close eye on him because her instincts told her something wasn't right. In the course of the flight, Lorraine noticed the man was frequently looking at his watch and checking the cabin, and she observed he didn't appear to be comfortable in his seat and wasn't carrying any luggage. The woman held her breath, hoping that her fears were unfounded as she worried that he might be carrying something dangerous. At mealtime, the man and the two girls ordered only one meal for themselves. Her curiosity was piqued by the fact that he didn't order separate meals for the girls, but she didn't rush to conclusions. While carrying the meal tray, she noticed the girls weren't eating. Both were staring at their laps, their faces pale and withdrawn. The thought that something was very wrong made Lorraine's heart sink. Her attention was drawn to the girls' silence and their gazes downward. As opposed to some parents who bring along coloring books and crayons or an iPad, these kids had nothing to keep themselves occupied. There seemed to be something wrong with them, and she wondered whether their dad had scolded them. To lift the girls' spirits, Lorraine planned something special for them. A few sandwiches and juice boxes were gathered to be taken to them. There was no doubt they would smile after seeing this. She approached them and the man looked at her disapprovingly and replied no. As a result of his defiant behavior, Lorraine was taken aback. Despite her best efforts, this man was determined to prevent her from bringing joy to the children. There was a sense of loss and a desire for attention to their eyes. It also seemed like they hadn't combed their hair in days and they looked somewhat untidy. How could a parent allow their children to live in such conditions? Having children was always something she wanted, and she couldn't stand the idea of not taking care of them and leaving them to their own devices. Lorraine knew she had to do something. She couldn't ignore her guts any longer. She quickly made a plan to discreetly ask the girls if they needed help and to signal the pilot for assistance if necessary. Lorraine's heart was racing as she approached the man and his daughters. She put on a smile and leaned down to speak to the girls. "Hi, do you like drawing?" she asked, trying to start a conversation. The girls nodded shyly and Lorraine handed them coloring books and crayons. As they began to color, she asked them if they were okay and if they needed anything. They looked up at her with his sad eyes and nodded their heads. But the man gave an angry stare at her that made her blood run cold. As the flight continued, Lorraine couldn't shake the feeling something wasn't right. She noticed the man was becoming increasingly agitated and was pacing back and forth in the aisle. Lorraine watched him closely, ready to intervene if necessary. She also kept a close eye on the girls, hoping they would be okay. During the flight, she noticed the man eventually let them each watch a movie. They had their headphones on and seemed a little more at ease, but Lorraine knew something wasn't right. She hadn't seen this kind of behavior from children before and she was worried they might be in danger. But there was one problem, she couldn't prove it. She needed to find a way to communicate with the girls alone. None of them were getting up to go to the bathroom, so Lorraine found it difficult to work on her plan. She continued to watch them as she wheeled the food along the aisles. They looked somewhat happy, but she could see fear in their eyes. She wanted to send a secret message to them only they could read. How was she going to do that without getting caught by their father? Lorraine was good with kids, so she tried to come up with a fun way to distract them to get the message out to them. It wasn't going to be easy. She asked one of the other flight attendants for advice and help. It was a difficult situation indeed, but her longtime friend Ava came up with a possible solution. They just needed to execute it perfectly so as not to arouse any suspicion from their father. Lorraine's nerves were shot. This was her only chance to see if these girls needed her help. Ava suggested that Lorraine offer the girls a game of tic-tac-toe with the winner receiving a special prize. The prize would be a note that Lorraine would secretly slip to the winner with a message to meet her in the bathroom. Lorraine thought it was a good plan and began to put it into action. She approached the girls with a smile and asked if they wanted to play tic-tac-toe. They eagerly agreed and Lorraine gave them each a piece of paper and pen. As they played the game, Lorraine made sure to keep an eye on the man. He was busy watching a movie and didn't seem to notice what was happening. It was a tense situation. She was really trying to do something without the man noticing, and it was becoming difficult. At one point, the man glared at her and the girls to see exactly what was happening, but he figured it was innocent and went back to watching his movie. It was a close call for Lorraine and the girls. When the game was over, Lorraine gave the girls their special prize. She whispered to the winner to meet her in the bathroom in 5 minutes. The girls nodded and Lorraine went back to her duties. She watched them closely. She could see they were finding it difficult to get up and go to the bathroom without the man getting suspicious, but 5 minutes later, the winner knocked on the bathroom door and Lorraine let her in. Lorraine asked the girl if she was okay if she needed help. The girl nodded and told her that her father was not her birth father. Her lips started trembling, her eyes growing glossy. She looked behind her as if the man was listening in. "It's okay," Lorraine said. If only she knew what she was getting herself into. What Lorraine had feared throughout the flight was seemingly coming true. The man and the two girls were not related. Lorraine swallowed a hard lump of air as she considered the implications of what she'd just gotten herself into. Wouldn't it be wise for her to pull the plug on her operation before it was too late? The worried flight attendant thought about reporting the matter to Ava first. Her friend had always helped her keep a clear head during such difficult moments. Lorraine also wasn't sure if the girls were in actual trouble just because the man wasn't their dad. What if she caused a stir only to end up being sued for defamation or something along those lines? Lorraine's mind raced so much the girl asked if she was okay. Lorraine nodded, her lips curling. The fact the girl asked her if she was okay was enough to tell her what she needed to do. She'd always helped people, whether it was dangerous or not. She wasn't about to stop now. But before she could do anything here, she'd have to help the girl back to her seat. It would be wise if the man she was with didn't suspect anything. Lorraine considered asking the girl a few more questions. She needed more context for what was happening, but the girl had already been away too long. The man would be looking. Unlocking the bathroom door, Lorraine asked the girl if their mom was alright with the man taking her and her sister away. The girl's answer would make her freeze in place. "Mommy wasn't home," the girl whispered, sadness lacing her voice. Lorraine had to shake herself back to reality. "It's gonna be okay," she whispered, even though fear had petrified her. Men capable of doing the things this man was doing weren't the kind to play around. The same way she did while inside the bathroom, Lorraine wondered if getting involved here was a wise choice. She led the girl back to her seat. After strapping her in, she walked over to Ava, using everything within her to remain calm. Ava saw her face devoid of emotion and stopped everything she was doing, accompanying her to the flight attendant's seats. "So?" she asked, and Lorraine nodded. "We were right, something's very wrong." Lorraine explained everything the girl had said, but she also shared the information deserved more context. What if the girl's father needed them flow now? What if their mom had arranged the whole thing? Interfering in private matters was never a good thing, but what if the girls truly needed help? "What do you want to do, Lorraine?" Ava asked. "Help," answered Lorraine with a straight face. She was realizing that getting in trouble for meddling in someone's personal issues wouldn't be as bad as regretting not having helped. Ava smiled and said, "We need a clear plan then. We have one shot at this. We can't afford to mess it up." "We need to assess what we know and don't," Lorraine said. She checked her watch. "We have 2 hours. 2 hours isn't enough," Ava answered. "What do we know? The man's taken the girl and her sister from their mother," Lorraine said. "He's flying them to a different country, which isn't a good sign. We know there isn't much we can do here," she continued. "But we can continue acting like we don't know what's happening. We don't want to spook him." She suggested asking the captain for help, seeing as he was the one who had access to the plane's communication systems. He was the only one who could convince the authorities to arrive on time. With the 2 hours counting down, Lorraine and Ava hurried to the captain and explained the situation. The captain was astounded and couldn't believe what he was hearing. Although he agreed the case might not be something huge, he couldn't take any chances. He'd heard about cases like this and he knew what he had to do. He contacted the authorities, explaining the situation at hand. He went over everything Lorraine and Ava had shared, from how scared the girls looked to how apprehensive and on edge the man was. He explained that Lorraine had made contact with one of the girls and ascertained the man wasn't their dad, but that wasn't all. The captain shared the girls were taken when their mom wasn't home, which made the situation even more serious. Since the plane was about an hour from touching down in Rio, the captain requested the authorities send a few squad cars and an ambulance and wait at the runway. He wouldn't be taking any chances. After the call, he thanked Lorraine for her initiative, asking her and Ava to remain calm and carry on their duties as usual. As far as Lorraine saw it, she'd done her part well. Now she only needed to hold on for 60 minutes and the girls would be safe. The man looked at Lorraine suspiciously as she passed them. He looked at the girls and they just continued watching their movies as per Lorraine's instructions. They just had to endure it for another half hour before they finally landed in Brazil. It was important for them all to remain calm as if nothing was going on, for them to execute the next steps in their plan. As the final minutes of the flight came, a serene quietness took the plane, but in the silence, emotions were charged. On one end, Lorraine's heart thumped in her ears as she wondered whether the plan would work. On the other end was the man, nervously craning his neck so he could catch a glimpse of what was happening outside the plane. As the flight was coming to an end, the captain made the necessary announcements. Everyone sat back as the plane slowly made its descent. Lorraine watched one last time as the man began talking to the girls. He was probably giving them instructions on what to do once they landed. It seemed like even he couldn't afford to mess this up. As the plane touched down, Lorraine knew it was now or never. She needed to spring into action and save the girls before it was too late. She saw the man get up and the girls had desperate looks on their faces. He wanted to quickly exit the plane from the back, but the girls resisted. Lorraine knew they were panicking. He grabbed their hands and one of the girls shouted. Lorraine made her way to the girls. The other passengers were looking as they could see the commotion. Luckily, the captain also came to help. Lorraine separated the girls from the man and the captain apprehended him as authorities made their way onto the plane. The man was immediately arrested. Lorraine and the girls were escorted off the plane and taken to a safe location in the airport. The girls were visibly shaken but relieved they were finally safe. Lorraine stayed with them until the authorities came to take their statements. It was then that Lorraine discovered something even more shocking. The two girls were eventually taken into protective custody. It seems Lorraine had helped break open a cold case that had been going on for years. The man had been on the run for a long time, and thanks to Lorraine's quick thinking and actions, he was finally caught. The girls had been missing for 2 years. Lorraine was baffled by the revelation. After the incident, Lorraine was hailed as a hero by the authorities and her colleagues. She'd saved 2 young girls from a life of misery and had helped bring a dangerous criminal to justice. The cops were able to bust open the whole operation and arrest everyone involved. Lorraine knew she had to do more to fight human trafficking. She volunteered with organizations that helped victims. She also made it her mission to educate others on the dangers of trafficking and how to identify and report suspicious activity. She later learned the girls were reunited with her mom and were doing well. She was so relieved that she listened to her instincts and acted when she did. Who knows what would have happened if she didn't?